Welcome to another episode of Biscuits and Jam from Southern Living. I'm Sid Evans, Editor-in-Chief of Southern Living magazine. We've recorded these episodes as we've all sheltered at home, and between passionate conversations about Southern food, you'll also hear honest takes about how these musicians have been dealing with the pandemic. Today's guest belongs to one of the most popular bands of the last 10 years, and his inspiration comes from his North Carolina roots.
To me, this is sacred. This is sacred land. I'm very connected to it. Shamefully so. It's ridiculous how connected I am to it.
Scott Avett, along with his younger brother Seth, formed the Avett Brothers 2 decades ago and broke through to mainstream success with their 2009 album, I and Love and You. Since then, the Avetts, along with bandmates Joe Kwan and Bob Crawford, have sold out venues across the world, won multiple Group of the Year honors from the Americana Music Awards, and been nominated for 3 Grammys. Their 10th and most recent album, Closer Than Together, landed at number 4 on Billboard's rock album chart last October. And the lead single, High Steppin', is a great example of the exuberance the band brings to both record and stage. This song is just pure fun.
I'm a high-steppin', high-bettin', love-giving, I'm a love-getting, I'm a stranger, I love stretching out my wheels. Overnighting on a desert strip, making time and losing grip, driving circles in the canyons of my mind.
Outside of the world of music, Scott is an accomplished visual artist, exhibiting his work for the first time earlier this year at the Soco Gallery in Charlotte. This week, we'll talk about Scott's love for painting, as well as proper Carolina barbecue.
Lexington barbecue, our father has taken us there growing up. That was the benchmark for us growing up in the Piedmont. So, you don't mess with Lexington barbecue.
All that and more today on Biscuits and Jam. Well, Scott Avett, welcome to Biscuits and Jam.
Thank you for having me.
So tell me a little bit about what it was like growing up in a small town in North Carolina.
I guess it's heavy on my mind right now, and just really relevant right now with our force into our present surroundings. We've really been forced into the now in an kind of a scary way to a lot of us, and then also to a really good way. And when I think back on growing up, in fact, I've just worked on some songs to this point. I get the feeling that like I have a real draw and connection to something much quieter than the life that I live, something much more contemplative. And when I keep going back to these times that I had growing up, where we had afternoons that were wide open, there wasn't a schedule, and I remember just having time to do with what I would do, and I would just be, And it seems like in adulthood, it's so hard to find it. It's so impossible to find those moments. So I go back to growing up in a small town where there's space, that was slow, that priorities were, I guess, simple. I'm really grateful for that. I think it paved the way. It carved the path for who I am and everything I do. So overall, the answer to that question is just I'm so grateful to have space, time, and literal, geographical space to be a kid.
So, Scott, are you on the farm where you grew up?
I'm adjacent to it. Yeah. I'm connected to it. In fact, me and my kids roam the woods that I did as a kid.
So I'm wondering if you could just kind of paint a picture for me of the farm.
Sure. We started, it was 65 acres. My dad's philosophy early on, whether he had a plan or strategy or not, he thought, well, I'm going to try to acquire some land. That's what I'll do with my money versus putting it back for a more conventional retirement. So he purchased land in like 1980, 1981, 82, when it was really inexpensive. So there were, motorcycles and go-karts, and we did a lot of farming growing up. It was all hobby, but it was big hobby farming. That sort of faded late 80s, 90s. And I think that's probably collectively in our county, in Cabarrus County. It's right beside Mecklenburg County where Charlotte is. I think as we traveled, as I've grown and traveled so much, I started noticing this value. But then I started seeing this definite monetary value in, why don't I go back and, settle there, because I can do it for cheaper than anywhere I've seen. And I also know the lay of the land. I understand it. And I was able to expand the farm really by about 80 acres or so. So we live on that. My brother and my sister and I all have land connected to it.
So do y'all have pigs, chickens, and goats and that kind of thing?
We have chickens, and I just got word that pigs are on the way because apparently the meat processing stuff, there's really a tragic story playing out right now with the meat processing, and some farmers are really getting put in some bad positions. So, but we always had cows, and we did have pigs as kids, and we've always had chickens. We have a big garden. And to me, this is sacred. This is sacred land. I'm very connected to it. Shamefully so. I mean, just like it's ridiculous how connected I am to it.
And your dad, so in addition to having this hobby farm, he was a welder. Is that right?
Yeah, that took up most of his time. So we would go down and work at his shop and cut metal and pick up metal scraps and paint equipment that he had built. I don't know if you remember anything like this, but I can't count the times I've cleaned my hands and arms in gasoline. I mean, it was like painting all day, and then Dad would say, "Here, take this gasoline and clean that off." I was just like, man, what is this? Looking back, I'm like, what was I doing? What were we doing? But yeah, he was a welder. My dad's main gig was traveling. They were bridge builders. So he traveled most of the time. In between bridges or jobs that they were doing, they would build in their shop. So they would build a lot of trailers, and they would build what they called wrecking rigs, which they would swing out underneath a bridge so you could work and do all the molding or the casting for the concrete or whatever. But Dad hired me early, 15 years old. In fact, it's funny, Bojangles Coliseum in Charlotte. We play there now. We do multiple nights a lot. And I've seen incredible. I saw Soundgarden there. I mean, it just goes way back. My first job with Dad was working over Independence Boulevard in Charlotte on that bridge that was directly like right under the Bojangles Coliseum overhangs. He had me working very young, and I think I needed that. I was a little more rebellious with my dad, or at least outwardly so. Seth might have been as well, and I think he needed me to get some taste of real life. So from 15 to 22 years old, I worked with him on the bridge off and on.
And so what about your mom? I mean, who was the cook in the family?
So Mom was the cook, and she didn't allow anything with wild food coloring in it. There were no Fruit Loops in our house. Okay. She's a very talented cook. She cooks very well, was capable of feeding us steadily and surely, like throughout our childhood. We always had breakfast. The funny thing is she never made more than she had to. We didn't go for seconds and thirds. It wasn't that kind of upbringing. It was, you're going to get one pork chop, mashed potatoes and green beans, and that's it. That's it. It wasn't a hard line, but I remember every time I had neighbors, just those good, just wholesome Southern drawl neighbors that would invite me over there. Well, the nearest neighbor was a mile away, but I would go to his house and they would have me, and we'd be having fried chicken and mashed potatoes and corn. And if I didn't get up and get seconds, it was an insult. They would insist anytime their son was over at our house. I'd have to ask my mom, is it okay if we have somebody eat with us? And she'd be like, God, I don't know if we have enough. It wasn't a stingy thing. It's just that she didn't make more than we had to have, which I don't know what that means, but it means something, I'm sure.
So what did the holidays look like around the Avett household?
The only tradition I really remember of us, other than basic ones like Christmas trees and turkey for Thanksgiving, was just warmth and just love. I mean, it wasn't very formal. It never was. There weren't formal candle lightings or formal days that we did this or that, caroling, or for this holiday we did A, B, and C. It didn't ever feel that way. It was never that formal. But it was always loving and always, I guess from a parent's perspective, holidays can get pretty stressful. I just remember them being warm and loving times. That's it. Now, The one tradition, though, that I will say that's going on ever since I was a kid, every year, is the Avett family reunion, which we would have somewhere in the Piedmont, North Carolina, and that was usually about 60 people, and that was all potluck. And that is a a family reunion once a year. I don't know if that's that common. Like it's annual, so that's nice. And that is a pretty big gathering. I remember one time Channel 9 or 36 coming out and doing a story on us when I was in middle school or high school, because of our family reunion was a tradition that was, I guess, something that wasn't happening as much anymore. So I will say that's a tradition that I'm at the helm of my generation of cousins. We're all inheriting it now.
And that's still going on.
It is, yes. Yeah, and I'm due to skip one. I haven't skipped one in a while. Sorry, Avett.
So I want to ask you about your grandfather, who was a preacher. Did you know your grandfather?
He baptized me, and then he died, 4 or 5 months after that. He fell off of a ladder while he was cleaning gutters and didn't realize he had injured himself. And when he'd gone to the hospital, it was too late, from what I understand. But he baptized me. So I never, he talked to me, but I don't guess I ever talked to him. But having a dad that was a preacher's son, I think there was a built-in rebellion there. Interesting, another tradition that's held true is that the church that we grew up in was a church that my dad and my grandfather had preached in for a moment, pushed for us not to take it all too seriously. So we would go to Sunday school, and then right before the church service, he'd say, let's go to K&W cafeteria and get lunch. So we would leave. And then when we were in church, he did hundreds and hundreds of character drawings of people sitting in church. And we would get the biggest kick. The Avett family would be over there drawing the congregation. And it was, to me, as I looked back on it, it was sacred. It was holy. God was wrapped all up in it, but it was definitely some delinquency going on there. And when I tried to pull something off like that at my girlfriend's Catholic church, I'll tell you right now, that didn't fly at the Catholic church. No way. No way. There's no horsing around at the Catholic church, but at the Methodist church, I guess you get away with it a little more. There's a little lighter heart with it. So growing up in that church, I saw my grandfather's book on our shelf. He was a tradition at that church. This book sat on the shelf for years, which was a collection of his sermons. And in my 30s, when I was really ready to put the throttle down on my spiritual journey, that book was just waiting for me. It's incredible, because the book was waiting when I was ready. And when I started reading it and my heart was open to it, the craziest thing, it led me to reading Gandhi. Gandhi led me to reading Leo Tolstoy's Christian, his Confession, and his Kingdom of God is Within You. That led me to reading Blaise Pascal, and all of it's led me to my current just deep love for Thomas Merton and Richard Rohr and John of the Cross, and then the anonymous writer for Cloud of Unknowing. So my grandfather started all that in me. But my relationship with the church was, I was very rebellious in my heart sitting in church. I still get flutters of that to this day, but I didn't grow up with an oppressive relationship with church.
So your dad also is a musician, and a very talented musician. You guys have performed together. You've made music together. I'm wondering what kind of influence he had on you as a musician early on.
Early on, we didn't grow up seeing our dad as a musician. I mean, he was just our dad, and he had put away the dream of being a musician to raise us, because I don't think that he could afford to do that and raise the 3 kids. So that's where welding came in, and that's what he did. He was very busy. Whatever he did, he was committed to be the best at it. So he was very good at that and put a lot of time into it, though he never identified himself as Jim Avett the welder. I don't think, only when that needed to be said. He would say a lot, my life is not at work. That's not my life. My life is elsewhere, and it's home really, but it's not at work. I don't live to work. But he kept the door open. He played guitar around us. I remember music was just a kind of like that book, kind of like my grandfather's book. It was just there for us. It was just there for us. There was a record player. There were a ton of records, mostly old, like country, like Merle Haggard and Kenny Rogers and John Conley and Willie Nelson. But then it also went into Bob Dylan and Neil Young. And it's interesting because very early we had this 8-track tape player, and a carton of 8-tracks. And one of my dad's 8-track recordings was in there, and we listened to that. But there was only like a handful of 8-tracks, and it was John Denver, my dad's 8-track. There was a 3 Dog Night 8-track. And I mean, it was enough to digest, just to sort of hear these things and romanticize. Like, you listen to Jeremiah Was a Bullfrog, you know, as a kid, you're like, whoa, okay, what is this? Like, and then John Denver. I mean, all I needed was that record, Grandma's Feather Bed, and then the sentimental vibe of home. And I'd find myself tearing up listening to it. So I think my dad just made music available, and we identified him as someone who was capable of delivering a song, like a songster. So I think that just was in a way a vehicle for us to look up to something in a non-musical way. Watching our dad's discipline and dedication to travel and being able to do it and maintain a home is really incredible. And that's something we worked very hard to do. But going further back, my grandmother was a pianist in the church, and music, she was going to be a concert pianist, and she really prioritized music. I'll never forget, I had a girlfriend that I dated for a long time and was very fond of. And I remember introducing her. My grandmother was in the bed because she was older, and she might have even been in like a hospital situation, but we were just visiting her. And I remember her pulling me down to her ear and saying, now, does she love music? And I didn't really know, because she was just kind of like, if she doesn't love music, she's not the one. And I mean, it's such a broad question, such a like, well, who doesn't love music? And I know this girl loves music, but yeah, I guess. I don't know. Are you really testing her right now? Like, I know
that was a deal breaker for her.
I know it was a deal breaker for her. It was a huge priority, and she recognized me as the delinquent between the brothers, because I was not one that was, Seth's very disciplined in practicing music. Musician is not a title that I throw around. I'm not like, music is a means to an end for me. It's one of the vehicles I use to express myself. It's all about creating. Music is universal, and its power is beyond description. However, I have no clue. I have no clue how to decipher it. All I know is how to chase down an expression.
We'll chat more with Scott Avett after the break. Welcome back to Biscuits and Jam from Southern Living. I'm Sid Evans, and we're talking with Scott Avett of the Avett Brothers. I want to fast forward a little bit and talk about your music family and your road family. Tell me a little bit about this group of people that you travel with now and what that's like, at least travel with when, we're not in a pandemic.
So the beautiful and unique thing about our just about 20-year journey has been that we were never successful enough to grow too fast. And we grew much like the children that we are. We grew slow, and people came along and into our family. Family members joined along the way in real time, naturally, slowly, never in more than like singular additions. It was always plus one, because we saw the need and we could identify the person, whether they were the greatest. We didn't always hire the best. Like, obviously, I'm not the best banjo player in the world, but I'm the banjo player for the Avett Brothers. It was more about the person. It's always been more about the person. And then the person would grow into the role. Like, I don't know if it's getting better. It's just us being on the journey. Now, it goes well beyond the band. We have a whole crew of people that we know and that we love. And they've come along the same way, slowly. And it's been so personal, and it's so intimate. And I can't imagine it being another way. I can't imagine putting out a record where we didn't somehow make the album cover. Even if someone else makes it, we're working with them, make it like we're making it. For us, we've crafted this family. In a lot of ways, this family is crafted itself. And it's been beautiful, and it's been a harbor of love, really. So it is just that. It is a family, and really just saying that it's a family and that we love each other is all that needs to be said.
So when you guys are traveling, do y'all sit down and have meals together when you're on the road?
We really do. Yeah, we eat. There's 2 or 3 tables full of people, and yeah, I mean it's pretty much the same time every night. And even when we're on these off days, and I I curse myself sometimes because sometimes I'm not in the best state of mind or best frame of mind to be socializing with my compadres. But even on a day off, we might have like 3 shows on, one day off, 2 shows on, 2 days off, and then four shows or whatever. And then you'll find yourself on the day off still eating with your family every night. It's just like, man, what's going on? But it's nice. It's nice that you to say that. It's nice to think about that and to reminisce on that.
So are you a barbecue guy? You're in the heart of barbecue country there.
Yeah, when I went to East Carolina University and got schooled in Eastern North Carolina barbecue versus Lexington style and the Western, I was like, okay, it is on, I guess. But yeah, my girlfriend, she's my girlfriend at the time. She's my wife now, Sarah. She used to live right across from Bee's Barbecue in Greenville, and we used to go to Bee's and get barbecue there. And there's obviously Parker's there, and then Lexington's a huge draw for us. That was what we had growing up the most. But I love a lot of barbecue, and I couldn't say I liked either one better or worse. I love them all.
All right. Well, so if somebody's visiting North Carolina for the first time and you got to pick one place, what do you think it would be?
In Charlotte, there used to be a place called the Hickory Smokehouse, which was incredible. It wasn't North Carolina style though. Lexington barbecue, our father has taken us there growing up, and that was the benchmark for us growing up in the Piedmont. So, you don't mess with Lexington barbecue, but I've never met anybody that puts the care and the thought into barbecue that Sam Jones at the Skylight in Ada, North Carolina. I think they may have a couple. They may have one in Winterville as well. But Sam has been real good to us. But I've had his barbecue on a number of occasions, and I mean it's incredible. So you'd have to drive 4 hours east of where I live to go eat that. But if you're in my area, go to Lexington.
That's high praise. So, Scott, I want to just shift gears for a second and ask you a little bit about your art. In addition to being a very accomplished musician, you are an incredibly talented artist. It's something that you've pursued for a long time, that you're very active in, but not everybody knows about. Tell me a little bit about what that means to you.
Art was something I just was naturally always doing and always drawn to. And what I mean by art is making things and creating things. A lot of my life has just been doodling, but organized and disciplined doodling will get anybody in trouble and will start showing up in dreams and lives in this case. And the discipline that I did study, figurative painting in school, the professor Leland Wallen was dead set on instilling in me some sort of a commitment to painting. And then Michael Elbeck, who was a printmaking professor there, was the same with printmaking. They different approaches completely, but it had a big impact on me. After being told that most art students go on to either work in restaurants for a living or go on to, mow yards, which to me, you can certainly be an artist in both of those fields, so it doesn't even really matter. But something about that, I guess, lit a fire to maintain the form, like painting, like maintain a studio, keep painting, no matter what, always paint. And so even when I started touring early and was really doing the hard work in touring as a musician, I was really dedicated and committed into the discipline of keeping a studio and making painting a part of my life, painting, drawing, printmaking when I could. And it remained that way always.
Well, so Scott, we've been talking a lot about family, and you've focused a lot of your art and your music around the subject of family. You've done some really large scale portraits of your wife and kids, for example. And I'm just wondering, how does that go over as a dad and a husband?
I get the expected complaints for sure. Yeah. Yeah. There's wait, Dad, why didn't you paint me in that one? I'm like, all right. Or why am I, what? And I have to tell them all, this is not you. This is a painting. This is not you. But that the family life, this season of life that I'm in, family is all that you see. It's just in your face. And if your eyes are open to it, if my eyes are open to it, I see some incredible things. It's just very, very beautiful. So it'd be crazy for me not to be affected by it.
I think it might have been yesterday or the day before, you posted a beautiful song on Instagram called A Father's First Spring.
Yeah.
And there was a lyric in that song that says, I was a child before the day that I met Eleanor, which is your daughter's name.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, how has being a father changed you as an artist and a musician?
Well, that's a really huge, it's a huge blow to the ego, having a child, witnessing a child being born, witnessing a partner going through that, witnessing a mother birth a child is such a huge blow to another's ego. And that's a good thing. I think one of the big early blows that are a series of blows that are knocking that ego, putting that ego in its place. And that has been a real benefit to me. It's really hard not to only think about yourself, but having children does a damn good job at interrupting that. And I'm grateful for that. That's because I know that that's really the goal. Because I'm leaving this ego. I know that I'm leaving it behind when I pass away. And the more that I can keep my eyes on it and keep it in check, I think the better I am to other people. And being good to other people is what being a dad is about. Being good to my brood over here, like that. I got to start there. I always think about wanting to change the world, and I'm like, then I'm being grumpy or something with my family, and I'm going, how can you change the world, Scott, if you're not going to, treat your family good, So having kids is a good exercise in good advocacy and good example. It's such a good opportunity to do that. I love being a dad, and I love watching these kids grow. I think they're going to be great men and women. I think that's exciting.
How has this time been for you, this sheltering in place? I'm guessing you probably haven't had this much time at home for a stretch in a while.
No, I haven't. And I've needed it. I think me personally was probably headed for something like this. It was either going to need to be self-imposed or it was going to need to happen some other way. And the other way probably would be, other than a pandemic, somebody getting sick or something. And there's all these like discomforts about it. And there, I said this the other day, there's real tragedy in this, and it's not about that. That's just not welcome, or nobody's happy about that. We were losing people from it, and people are losing jobs, and people are hurting, and that's not cool. But I think collectively a pause is healthy. And I think that we'll all come out much stronger and better for it.
Well, and it's probably been hard on your work family. There's a lot of people that depend on you guys.
Totally. Well, luckily we've been able to keep our guys employed, and we hope we can just come up with a way to string that out and make it happen. Yeah, it's just such a paradox because it's so bad and it's so good. It really is. And it's so dark. Like, and by dark, I mean, it's so new and unknown. It's like going into the dark, and there's so much good about that. I feel for the people, the healthcare providers that are taking care of people. I mean, this is real stuff, man. So my heart goes out to all of them and people that have lost loved ones and people that are sick. We think about it a lot, and we just hope that whenever we get an opportunity to do something for somebody, we identify it and seize it. And then the good that this has to offer, we hope to seize that too, and not take it for granted. And then when we do get back out there, it's going to be awesome. It's going to be like, we're going to be so grateful to be able to work, so grateful to be able to play. It's going to be cool.
You guys have written a lot of songs about struggle and hardship. And there's a song I love called True Sadness. And it has this line, just know that the kingdom of God is within you, even though the battle is bound to continue. I'm just wondering if it's occurred to you that your music has really helped people get through this time.
It does occur to me. I'm told as much. And so I try to ride that obligation in as sincere a way as I possibly can, because turning off is probably what is called for. In a lot of ways, shutting it all down is wise and will do for the soul great things. But at the same time, I mean, you could put out a song or say a word to someone, and it does mean that much. And it's not my call what it means. It means something completely different to me. But it does occur to me that it matters, and so I try to stay obligated to that, and also stay sincere that I do things like put a song out there or perform a group of songs for whatever, Instagram or anything else that might lighten someone's day or brighten someone's day. But I do it in a sincere way, because if I'm not doing it in a sincere way, I think it's going to start turning in on itself, Well,
you had a great song the other day where you were in the chicken coop, and it sounded like you had some voices in the background accompanying you.
It's awesome. So yeah, and I was doing all these, like I was doing a lot of them, and that one was just after that one. I was like, oh man, I need to shut this down. But I actually shifted gears and have been working on a painting. And the painting, I'm so dedicated to it, it's taken all my time, and it's slowed me down a bit. But I don't get this morning. Seth and I were able to do a little something together that'll come out somewhere at some point, and we know that it matters, and we don't just go never mind, I'm not going to do it. I just sometimes not doing is right. Sometimes it's better. I'm in no shape to be talking to anybody or sharing my nonsense with somebody. And I got to identify that as well. Like, it's best you just stay put right now, Scott.
I just want to ask you about one more song. There's a song on your new album, Closer Than Together. It's called It's Raining Today. And there's a lyric in there that says, it's raining today. Let's stay in our room. Be patient, babe. The clouds will break soon. It almost seems like you wrote that song for right now.
I guess so. Yeah. I didn't even. Yeah. Well, I didn't. But what did I was listening to Richard Rohr talking. This has been last year at some point, and he said, and this might have been a quote he picked up from somebody else, but he said, things are as perfect as they can be, and they always are. And I just, sometimes I don't at all understand that or think about that. And It's Raining Today is, really about depression probably. And didn't need a pandemic to feel that song, to know that song, or to feel isolated and locked down. I can be on top of the world, theoretically speaking, and just feel locked down and feel like a prisoner. And I can be, at times during this pandemic, I've felt as liberated as I've ever felt. So I don't understand that. I try to honor that, and I try to recognize that in myself and understand what that means.
Do you mind just singing a little bit of that chorus?
How's it go? Let's see. It's raining today. Let's stay in our room. Be patient, babe. The clouds will break soon. But I must confess, I'm glad if they stay. I don't want to leave. It's raining today.
Here and then gone, invisible dawn, all of of the edges are frayed. No warmth on my shoulders, no breeze to carry these old worries away. My hat's on the porch, it's heavy and sold. I'm on the steps and I don't have a coat. What do I do? What can I say? It's raining.
Well, I think we ought to leave it there.
Yeah.
Scott Avett, thank you for being on Biscuits and Jam.
Thanks for having me, Sid.
Thanks for listening to my conversation with Scott Avett. Closer Than Together, the latest album from the Avett Brothers, is available wherever you get music, and you can visit theavettbrothers.com for news, updates, and more. Southern Living is based in Birmingham, Alabama, and this podcast was produced and edited in Nashville, Tennessee. If you like what you hear, please consider leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts or telling your friends about the program. You can find us online at southernliving.com, as well as on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And subscribe to our print publication by searching for Southern Living at www.magazine.store. Biscuits and Jam is produced by Heather Morgan Schott, Chrissy Tiglius, and me, Sid Evans, for Southern Living. Thanks also to Ann Kane, Jim Hankey, Eliza Lambert, and Rachel King at Pod People. Come on by for more Biscuits and Jam next week. We'll see you then.